Hey everyone, episode 5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Hi,
have
Katrina.
Katrina. Hi.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi.
So Katrina was a longtime general manager of Rustic Kitchen in Boston and Park Square, and then again for Bar Rustic in Kingston, both in Massachusetts, and was also at Rustic Kitchen Hingham for a while. So three locations. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
3
so
locations.
Popped into all 3 at one point.
and where are you, what town are you in right now?
I live in Concord.
Home of Battle of Lexington, Concord, start of the American Revolution, the
Wandering
Minutemen.
around the world, obviously.
Yeah, the start of the
birthplace
world.
of
Yeah,
America.
Birthplace of America. Patriots Day is like a really strong theme with a lot of the stories today for some reason. I started dating Max around Patriots Day. I started working for you the following Patriots Day weekend. Yes, it's a pretty big weekend for me, really. So like the night before Patriots Day in Concord, they have a midnight ride of people riding in on horses. Samuel Prescott, actually, because Paul Revere had already been captured. But anyway, so I didn't believe it happened at midnight.
that was wrong.
So
It wasn't Paul Revere.
Listen, my children, and you
Yeah,
still
the poem's wrong.
hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
We've all been
It just
right
rhymes
to.
better. It was Scott. He got robbed by history.
I guess so. Either way, I also lived here for a very long time without knowing that there was a midnight party over in downtown Concord. So we stood, more importantly,
You weren't invited.
man, I was never invited. So we stood at the top of that cemetery, watched, dressed as red coats, marching down the street, and they met this man on a horse. I was like, has this been going on my whole life?
Who knew? Who knew?
It was
Did you grow up in Concord?
the town next door. I grew up in Lincoln.
Okay.
But
Right.
yeah,
Oh.
so around the corner.
So Katrina joins the Rustic Kitchen family in what year?
April 2011.
April
Right after Patriots Day.
2011.
Yeah.
And you were working at a hotel in Boston, if I right. You were like a morning manager or a breakfast man? No.
I was working actually at a hotel in Concord. I was here in Concord, and
Okay.
it was an inn that had restaurants. So I was
Right, it was
managing
an
the
inn.
restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I came from there, and you were hiring for. You had just partnered with the Revere.
Well, was it the Radisson or the Revere when you came?
It was the Revere.
It was already the Revere?
The Greek
So it had
family.
the Radisson flags, but
Yeah.
it was the Revere.
Yeah.
They hadn't switched over yet. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Mike Wharton has been trying to get me to go apply to this place. They need someone who knows hotels. Obviously, I do. There are about 6 bedrooms in this hotel where I work. I know what I'm doing. So, yeah, the rest is our history.
So when you got hired, was there any discussion of the whole 4 diamond thing that we were going to do?
I mean, I think not yet.
Okay.
No,
I
that
think
came
everything
after.
was very new.
I don't know if I mentioned that in the advertisement of the first interview, but we knew it was coming, and that was primarily the goal, was to have Katrina become the morning manager, because with the new ownership, our responsibilities grew. We took over room service, we took over breakfast. Eventually we ended up doing all the food for the pool. We did some private events for them. So this was all coming at us, and we knew we needed, and breakfast, by the way, is a dog. We knew it was a dog, but it was a part of the relationship. We were trying to build a relationship with the new owner. We ultimately did a better job than they ever had in the past. So anyway, Mike Wharton, by the way, worked for the hotel. Really nice guy.
Mhm.
He was overseeing functions, I believe, and he had known Katrina, mentioned her to me, and he set up the interview. So Katrina comes in, and we have an interview, and I immediately like her. But I want Katrina to tell the story from her point of view, because it's a funny story what happens. Go ahead, Katrina.
How do you know Mike Warren had called Jim? I had applied through Craigslist, and I let him know because he's like the we worked together here in Concord, and he was like the older, kind of like the older brother who like didn't want to be like, yeah, I applied to your friend. Like I didn't want him, I was grateful for his help, but I also didn't want to, for it to feel like he got me a job, which he did. But which
Now you got it on your own merits.
well, I let him know, but they had spoken. And so when I went there, I was like, wow, I'd never really had an interview before because I don't know, I started the other place as like a host, and then they fired someone. They're like, you look like you can hold keys, like you can get it. I was like, these interviews are weird. He's like showing me around, like, and this is the buffet, and this is where you'll sit, and this is, can you start Tuesday? I was like, I think I got the job, but I was very grateful for that interview. But because of the timing of everything, it was early April, and my niece was going to be born via C-section like the following week. So I'd already requested a week off, and being 20 flat, and I didn't want to leave them high and dry. Obviously, I was the only one running the place at that point. They couldn't survive without me. I was like, so I'll give you 3 weeks because I'm like going away and I'll come back and give you 2. Prior to that, Jim had already told me, don't be surprised if they just, tell you kick rocks. So we're all set. Thank you. I was like, they could never. This place is right. But yeah, they essentially told me I was done. When I came back from the baby beat, I did at my desk, and the guy was so rude. And it was Patriots Day weekend again, so I go marching upstairs for fun, and I'm like elbowing my way through reenactors and people dressed as Paul Revere, and the sons of the American Revolution are marching around. They bought jewelry store in it, and I found him in there, and I just very dramatically handed my keys. So I'm sure I made some, I don't know, some pun about the revolution, but I definitely left. And then I was devastated, and I forgot you guys had the marathon.
Yeah, didn't he
What?
throw out your shoes?
He threw out my shoes.
You threw out shoes.
Yes, I was gone for like a week.
And Katrina always has several extra pairs of shoes.
She has.
If you look
She has
under her
great
desk,
Always.
there were lots of shoes.
Everywhere. That didn't. So we didn't have offices at my last restaurant, and so the coat room I just took over. It's hard. You have to pull a pair of shoes there, then you got to slip into your heels, and
Yeah.
Then you have to have flats.
I
don't like flats.
She wears wedges.
Flats.
She wears wedges.
Oh, the
A lot of
wedges.
wedges.
Yeah, but if you're on your feet all day and all night, at some point you got to take those off.
She was very impressive in her interview, and I liked her immediately. And I knew the job that I needed her to do. I'm not quite sure she knew what it was, but the whole thing about I'm going to give my notice and I'll see you in 3 weeks. I knew they were going to cut her loose right away. That's what companies do. There's no benefit for them to hang on to someone, So when
I should have believed him, but again, it was.
When she called afterwards, and she was like, they cut me loose. I was like,
I was devastated.
We can use you right now. Start whenever you're ready because we need help. So Katrina comes on board, and she is in charge. She's the morning manager, and we have to figure out this whole breakfast thing. We need to set it up differently. We're in a location that's now adjacent to our restaurant. It used to be at a spot across on the other side of the hotel. And everything, we had to kind of reinvent it. And the whole while, by the way, it doesn't do a lot of business. Cassie, she can join in. It doesn't do a lot of business.
Just for context for people, though, how many rooms are in the hotel? 700?
No. 365. 365.
Hi, Cassie. Yeah, Papa finally made it. Papa made it. Yeah, before the call, Papa couldn't turn his camera on, and Cassie was looking for Papa. Hi.
I should talk to you.
Cassie, I have to tell a story now. So there's a big hotel in downtown Boston, 360 odd rooms, and on the ground floor we have this restaurant, and new owners buy the hotel, and so we have a new landlord, and as part of the changeover, they rebrand the hotel and we as this restaurant tenant take over a bunch of the F&B for the hotel, the room service, the morning breakfast. So it's a whole new operation that we never had done before, just as a restaurant.
Right.
And so we needed new staff. We needed people that would be there at 4 or 5 a.m. We needed a manager to run that. We needed someone that could liaison with hotel guests. We needed to tie in system. So the whole new operation that Katrina's coming into, and we're learning. So back to what you were saying, Jim.
And buying new product, breakfast products are typically some things that we didn't have. Uniforms were different. And then in the middle of all this, as we're figuring it out, and there's a hard changeover date. They're like, you guys are taking this on this day. So when that happens, they also come to us and say, we're rebranding this hotel. Along with that rebranding, we want to be a 4-diamond hotel,
AAA
4-diamond hotel. And in order to do that, the entire hotel, every department needs to upgrade their systems and their steps of service in order for us to get to be a 4-diamond hotel. And the F&B program of a hotel is the largest piece of the whole puzzle. So we not only need to adopt 4-diamond standards and integrate them into our current restaurant, we actually need to adapt them and modify them for breakfast. So we look at their standards and we compare them to our steps of service. Our steps of service actually, I think, were better, were more detailed, and in most cases actually exceeded the 4-diamond steps of service. But we needed to comply with them, and we were going to be mystery shopped and tested every other week until we get to that level. So Katrina and I take these standards and we mesh them together and we come up with a new 4-diamond standard that's applicable for a Rustic Kitchen. And I give that to Katrina and off she goes. And there's a couple of people that are left over from the hotel that we absorb. We have to hire some new people. And then on day one, it was like, okay, guys, go do your thing. So Katrina is coming in early in the morning. What time are you coming in the morning?
Oh my God. I don't remember, but I think it opened at 6, right?
Yeah.
Initially.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I was there like 5:35 or something like that.
So you're probably getting up at 4:30. So that starts, and we start getting tested, shopped and tested, and we work out, the bugs, and we come up with training seminars, and we do a morning staff on staff training, and then later we do a afternoon staff on staff training, and things get better. And the first thing that happens is the staff starts to make more money, and now they start to embrace it because, hey, this could be a good thing. And the morning staff tells the afternoon staff, this is for real. This could work. And that helped us tremendously because there was a lot of pushback. We had people that they didn't want to do this. They didn't understand it. And they didn't understand that it wasn't our choice. We were mandated to do this. So Katrina is the person who takes the ball and she runs with this. And she does those training sessions and she works with the staff and she gets them up to a point where they're really doing well and we're getting a lot of compliments. But along the way, I think we lost our nighttime manager. I forget who it was when you first started, but there was a point early on that we said, will you become the night manager and we'll replace you as the day manager? And that's when you became the general manager of the whole restaurant. And that didn't take very long from the time you started, from my memory.
No, I really don't remember the timeline. I think it was. I don't remember the timeline at all.
Yeah,
I
feel like you became the general manager pretty quickly after that.
Pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. But I don't remember the actual timeline because I feel like Berkeley he was managing. For some reason, that just feels like so long ago. But there's so much that happened first few years or first few months too. It was wild.
So I didn't realize it was 2011 you came, that was that late. I don't know if you overlap with this person. There was a manager that I'm assuming predated you there, that was caught on our cameras in the office.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember this?
There were a couple of guy managers.
That was before my time.
We had a string of managers.
We don't want to name any names.
we're not gonna name any names, but this is why you should
Right.
hire female managers because you can trust them more
We switched to all
to not
female
do
men.
inappropriate things in the back office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, I
Never
don't know
look
what
back.
you're talking about at all. I was thinking it was a female manager. Like, now I don't know who it is.
No.
Were you there when the robbery happened? When the guy went in the back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, funny thing, I think I was at a wine tasting with Christy. Like, I was with like the Rustic Hingham girls, and we were like, what is happening? Like, we all got a text at the same time. We're like, okay, Jim chased after.
Oh, that was
Robber?
That was a guy who reached over the host stand.
Then with him?
Over the host stand, grabbed the host
Oh,
bag,
yeah.
ran. Jimmy chased him down the street, down the subway, over the turnstile.
Caught him.
Caught
Peter
him.
Regan, of course.
Got the bag.
I influenced him to return the wallet. I kindly influenced him to return the wallet and accidentally scuffed up my knuckle while I was influencing him. But I got the wallet back. I let him go once I had the wallet. And but you're talking about another robbery.
Yes,
That was
there's two different robberies. Yeah.
No, really?
The other
There was
one
a
was
guy
when
that
they
went
took
all the way
all
into the
my
back
cash
office.
from my office.
That is what I'm
Yeah.
thinking of. The guy that we had on
There's a-
camera because
we-
it was dark and you could see the flash of someone's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I remember too.
So yeah, there was the
That one I
robbery of
remember.
the host stand of the purse, but then Kathy had the cash deposits stolen out of her purse all the way in the back office. Yeah.
So I think that's the one that I was referring to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although,
And then for people that like these restaurant robbery stories, in our Faneuil Hall location,
Oh
this is a
yeah.
crazy story. It's not so in Faneuil Hall, the restaurant was here. You had to leave the restaurant and go down a corridor and then down underneath Quincy Market for the manager's office. And one night our manager leaves the restaurant, goes into the basement of Quincy Market, and there's a guy breaking into the safe and with a screwdriver, like a flathead, turns on him, tries to attack the manager. The manager, they have a scuffle, they escape, but then he gets back, runs back to the restaurant, says we're being robbed, and our other former manager, a guy named Alex, unfortunately has since passed away.
Yeah.
He was from the country of Georgia, not the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Him and his buddy chase this guy down.
Catch him.
Again, something happened with their knuckles, fell into his face. I don't know. Recovered the money in Faneuil Hall, but then the Faneuil Hall security guards, they come running down there, see this. They let the guy go, thinking that our manager is assaulting him. So the guy gets away, but Alex got back the deposits. Yeah, so that's at least 4 robberies that we've had in Boston. Yeah.
And by the way, on the robbery that you knew about, Katrina, we ID the guy. I had it on tape. And they bring photos by. We ID the guy. They go get him. And when Mom and I go to court, the day we go to court, we find out they released him. And they said, there's no way this could be the guy because, the tattoos that he had, he doesn't have the tattoos anymore.
This is the guy that I think Anne Marie found him, right? One sleeping in the back of the bar.
And
she called his mother. There's something about like he left his keys or something, and she called the home. She looked up the address and she spoke to his mother. Was like, "Listen, you gotta get your son."
Well, that wasn't this guy because if I caught this guy, he would.
Is he from Winthrop? I just remember the guy from Winthrop, and I was like, Anne Marie.
No. If I caught this guy, we wouldn't have this discussion on tape. Let's put it that way. But what you're talking about in general is this location in Boston was in the theater district. It was on the edge of what used to be called the combat zone. And it was a very active location, had a very colorful nightlife in that area. And between what passed by outside, certain people that would come into the restaurant that weren't necessarily there to have dinner, there were problems. Thievery, and we had a very colorful staff too. So there was never a dull moment in this restaurant. There was always something going on that had to keep you on your toes. And one of the reasons we wanted to have Katrina on this podcast is she managed this whole thing, whether it was the hotel and their demands, or the Four Diamond Standard, or people coming in off the street that shouldn't have been there, or our staff, which was a very large staff in the end. All of these moving parts, Katrina somehow managed and kept it all even, profitable, and she always did it with a smile. She always did it like she's doing right now. She was always.
I have very fond memories of that restaurant. But back on the colorful neighborhood, one of those mornings going to work, do you remember? I saw I literally walked by coming to work what ended up being the double homicide with Aaron Hernandez.
I don't remember.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I don't even remember this.
I saw the costume tape and everything going to work. I was like, what is going on here? Why is that car blocked off?
Well, you used to date Aaron, right? In college?
I never knew that.
No, but
I never knew that, Katrina. I never knew that.
I think you did at the time, because being out that early in the morning, sometimes people are still out from the night before.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really make that connection. Yeah, I didn't make that connection till I was talking about, I forget what I even referenced. It was like, all these ladies going to work or something, and Tom Holloway was like, they might be coming back from it. So I was like, huh? Or they're dressed up. Like,
yeah, they were just coming
I'm
home.
like, we're talking about the same ladies.
With ghost stories.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
so
I believed every last one of them, really.
Me too.
So the site of this restaurant was our kitchen is literally on the site of the Coconut Grove fire, which is the deadliest fire in Boston's history, but is it the deadliest fire in American history?
It's the sixth deadliest fire. It's the sixth deadliest fire in the country's history.
And number one in Boston.
Yeah, definitely, and the worst nightclub fire. I mean, the things that supersede this are things like 9/11, and there was the Chicago theater fire one time when 900 people died, but 490 people died on the site. It's a very large site, a part of our restaurant, and then a part of the back kitchen, and then the loading dock and the street outside were all under what was sort of the Coconut Grove that was cobbled together. But our kitchen, where the expo area was right at the backside of the dance hall of the Coconut Grove. And there was a tiny little door where a lot of people were able to escape from. And in the dishwashing area, that actually was in the Broadway Lounge, which is where the bar was. And a lot of people died in what was basically our back kitchen. So all of that was something that I learned about while we were there. I did a lot of research. I'm actually on the Coconut Grove Memorial Committee, and we're getting ready to be able to have a memorial built in Statler Park. But there were stories about ghosts that would appear upstairs in the theater. And then Anne Marie said she saw two. And then one of our night cooks saw one too. So I don't know how far you want to go in this podcast.
Well, was it Muhammad? There was a server. I remember one night.
Muhammad and Anne Marie, they were together.
Yes. Is that the one where they said they were looking for the exits? The guy in the dark coat and the hat. Yeah. So the fire's in 1942, right?
It's November 28th, 1942.
So 1942, big fire. There's a nightclub. All sorts of what would now be code violations in terms of locked doors. Fundamentally changed building codes and fire codes in America. Also, I think the first use of penicillin, is civilian use of penicillin. So, anyways, there's tremendous tragedy. But our staff members one night, we had locked up the restaurant. They're closing up, and they say they saw a man in period outfit, 1942, in what you would imagine a man would look like, asking for the exits. And the server pointed him to the door, and then I think Anne Marie's we already locked up.
Yeah,
and they believe they saw a ghost of a man.
Well, yeah, that one was George the cleaner, and he was the first one who complained about people in the kitchen. And I said, "What do you mean people in the kitchen?" And he told me that night, and he said the guy had a hat and an overcoat on, and he looked like an old guy. And I said, how old? And he said, not an old guy, but like old from before. And I said, what did he want? And she said, he just wanted to know where the exit was. And I showed him, and he was gone. And then Anne Marie said, one day before she opened for lunch, a staff member said, there's someone at the host stand wants to talk to you. And she goes around, comes out of the kitchen, and there's a woman impeccably dressed, but in the period of the 1940s, and she had a beautiful hat and a beautiful coat, and she wanted to know where the exit was. And Marie said, it's right here behind you. And she asked a few more questions, and Anne Marie, the phone was ringing. Anne Marie went to get the phone, and when she came back, she was gone. So Anne Marie tells us that story, and that there were other people that had told us stories, but those two were from our. I mean, these are people that they didn't really have knowledge of the Coconut Grove. They didn't have any other reason.
They had no
Yeah.
idea.
To make this up. So yeah, yeah.
Poor George is in the kitchen with all these ghosts every night. He's like, why is everyone coming in here?
I know.
Even
That and it gets
and
straight to
Peter,
so for years.
Peter, rest his soul, he saw a ghost.
Peter saw a ghost. Yeah.
Oh,
We had
I don't
several
remember
staff
that story, but
members all independently have experiences of seeing things in this
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah, no. Peter
And then
he heard the ghost. It was a woman, a female, behind him when he was at the service station. Yeah.
So Jim's on the board of the Coconut Grove Memorial. So as we're learning the history of this site, Jim starts doing a lot of research and finds out there is this committee that was trying to get off the ground. He joins the board. They were able to change the name of the street to recognize it, and now they're building a memorial. But for years, I was the volunteer webmaster for this organization, and I got an email once from a woman in London saying her 7 or 8 year old son was telling them stories that he was in the fire, and that it was like he's having a second a past life, and the details she was describing about the site, she wanted to confirm. She's England, she's in England, and her son is saying, I died in the Coconut Grove, and he's giving her specifics, and she was checking with us if these match up, and they all matched up, and she doesn't know how her 7-year-old in England knows all these intricate details of this fire from 1942. And yes, very, very interesting stories.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I just got
I
chills.
didn't know that story. I know, me too.
So all of these things happen at Rustic Kitchen Boston, and we were there for
It's a place.
11. We were there for 11 years.
Probably 2005 or
2016. Yeah. The Boston restaurant, it was not only a busy restaurant, it was not only a large restaurant. I think we had 225 seats total between the atrium, the bar cafe, the main dining room, the wine room, the Tuscan room, the studio. We did a lot of functions. We did breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We did room service. Eventually, when they opened the pool, we did the pool food. So we were basically open almost 18 hours a day in a very lively neighborhood that catered to the theater crowd, which had their own dynamic, because the theater crowd would come in and want to have an entire 3-course meal while they looked at their watch and then run out to make it to one of the shows in time. So they were always very demanding. And then you have these crazy things like Coconut Grove ghosts that are, hovering around. And Katrina handled all of this. And, she always did it with a smile, which always amazed us. And I mean, just running the restaurant while the cooking shows were happening was a full-time job. That was a trick to be able to get 30 flawless dinners out in the middle, which were 7 o'clock on a Friday night, which is your peak period, and the dining room full, and you might have a function or two happening, all coming out of one kitchen. And she used to do that. So we always.
I do remember feeling pretty confident about myself by the end of Boston. Like we are like pulling it here. We can do anything. Our events were flawless. It was. I mean, Friday nights was so fun because like we would get destroyed before. Like we'd be so busy. You would have the show simultaneously, and then the show would get out, and the restaurant would seem like we'd be empty for hours because, of course, like everybody had just gone to the show. And then we fill up again. It was wonderful. It was so fun. I have like only fond memories of all of that. There were definitely some crazy times.
I think,
but they were good. They were good.
the only stress we ever had was stress that came from the hotel. Just to
So I was
wrap
just like,
up on
just like, yeah.
to wrap up on the Four Diamond thing. So when we're getting tested and mystery shop, we achieved the Four Diamond status before the hotel. And that was a big pebble in their shoe because they, supposedly were superior operators, but they weren't. And there was always this resentment between the hotel people and our restaurant people. And they would actually try to raid our staff to go work over there. And that was a problem. And we used to have these sit downs
Oh, yeah.
and ground rules where you couldn't do certain things. And then they had their salespeople would make commitments for events in our space that we wouldn't be properly compensated for. They'd give the store away, to do what was best for the
Compensated.
hotel.
They never even told us.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So we had with everything happening at this property, it was the hotel that caused the only anxiety. It wasn't the volume, it wasn't the people, it wasn't the staff, it wasn't the hours, it wasn't everything we did. It was just this lack of communication from the hotel. And they looked at us like we're the operator, we're going to do what they want.
Right.
But we were independent, so we were a tenant. And it was
Mm-hmm.
it was for a for-profit operation. It wasn't like we were an extension of that. So we made
Right.
But even though we were independent, the physical layout of this space, we didn't have our own kitchen. We had a kitchen, but it was not private. So to get to the loading dock and the prep kitchen for the hotel, they had to walk through our kitchen. So they're always in our space. They feel like everything's theirs, even though we're a tenant, we're independent.
Right.
It was it's a poor relationship, and there was 3 different owners over the course of those 10 years, very different owners each time.
Right when we got them trained properly, they sold it. We had another group.
Yeah, right.
So, but the other thing is we had a great staff there, and it was a big staff, and they were really a bunch of characters. You could almost call down to central casting and pick all these very different people and get them but somehow they became a great team, and they were very good at what they did. We always had great service scores, and that was 100% Katrina, always constantly training and retraining. We had a lot of, I would say most of the staff, like most of the restaurant industry, they're not full-time servers. That's not their profession. They're students, a lot of law students, New England School of Law right next door.
Emerson, a lot of Emerson students.
A lot of Emerson. Medical, we had nurses in nursing school from Tufts, a block and a half away. So we have people that we had to sort of juggle around their schedules, which would be changing. We had a couple of moms, working moms. And then we had 1 or 2 that were servers by profession. Gustavo is a professional server. Peter, professional server. And these guys, they knew everything. They had the best steps of service. They had the best wine knowledge. They had the best greeting. They remembered guest names, the repeat customers. So they always were our go-to whenever we had someone, or VIP or a big party. They always got those parties if they were on first, because we always knew they would do a great job. And we also had our own standards. We changed that restaurant to be sort of a step above a typical Rustic Kitchen. Our uniforms are different. Remember, we had the bistro,
the vests,
and zip ties. We had to get zip ties because no one knew how to make.
As it turns out, no one knows how to tie a knot. Let's get them like the kids version.
Just get the zip ties, and
we're gonna have to dumb this down.
Yeah, and they looked great. I remember I photographed a bunch of them. I photographed a bunch of the girls.
I love that. The behind the bar.
They're all polishing the glasses. Yeah, we'll drop that in.
Picture.
Yeah. And then the guys, I didn't want to say this to the guys, but the girls are pretty and they look great in uniforms. I take a bunch of pictures, and I also take portrait shots of each one of them that I could send them and I could have them. And then I didn't do any of the guys. I did Gustavo because Gustavo's great. He did not want to be photographed, but all of a sudden the other server, the guys are like, "Hey, why didn't you photo us?" And I said, "Well, I have enough photos for what I need, for the website. But thanks anyway." And but yeah, we did. I actually have. I photoed you, Katrina. I photoed.
We have lots of photos of Katrina.
We have a lot of photos of Katrina. Yeah. Yeah.
Behind the original studio, I think I have one with you holding a whisk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never wet.
Yeah. So that was a great restaurant, and it was a lot of fun. And of course, we had the marathon bombing. You know, that was
Oh yeah.
So we're only how many blocks from Boylston where the bomb went off?
2.5 blocks from the bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the roads are closed until
I
St.
heard
James.
it. I thought it was
the
it
neighborhood.
sounded like
You could feel, you heard, and there was something that clearly had happened, and then a wave of people descending.
Yeah.
And one of our friends was running it, Mr. Kelly Buck's father, Jim. Yeah. And you literally come in and collapsed on the floor, and then it's and then we were locked down for a week. That was crazy.
And we actually we would go in and open for breakfast and serve all of the first responders.
All the first responders.
That was a really big weekend for us.
Yeah.
Patriots Day.
So for people not from Boston, so I think actually 9/11 is called Patriot Day now. They do a national proclamation, but before 9/11, historically, Patriots Day is a holiday in Boston that's also Marathon Monday, right?
Yeah, I forget that's not. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of the country doesn't know Patriots Day as a holiday. They might know 9/11 as Patriot Day, but it's from Lexington and Concord, right? Is that what the holiday is celebrating, Patriots Day, from the start of the Revolution?
I guess I thought it was everywhere.
Yeah,
I get this just over here.
So Patriots Day in Boston, it's Marathon Monday. It's a big day. Everyone has off. You're watching the marathon. You're going to bars, and then also in Boston, St. Patrick's Day is typically Evacuation Day, another holiday, because that's the day the British left the city. Yeah. So a lot of good drinking holidays in Boston, which being in LA, I just tried to do St. Patrick's Day here and it was like pulling teeth. I tried, no one in this town cared about me trying to recreate my East Coast, New York, Boston, or Chicago St. Patrick's Day. No one cared. I tried so hard to do a pub crawl this past weekend. I got 4 people to show up, partly because law students are boring, partly because LA does not care about St. Patrick's Day. Also, in Boston, our staff was very cool. We had international staff. We had very talented, Emerson students, people doing things. But then we had our fair share of actors and celebrities, athletes. So we're not gonna say certain names, but there was an Academy Award-winning actress that one night almost broke our glass. Do you remember that?
That was before my time. I just heard the story for the first time.
So there's that.
Or night off.
There's this one's a good one, so we can say. So John Malkovich, who was a good guy, he was fine. He came in. He was doing a stage show in Boston. Yeah. John Travolta stayed there. This is the hotel that Gronk's brothers destroyed a hotel room. That's public record. I think I can put that out if you Google.
Totally forgot about that.
Gronk's family. Yeah, from the Patriots.
Yeah. Public record we can put.
Oh, Conor McGregor. I just learned he was. Yep.
I like him.
Conor
Sebastian
McGregor came in
though, before he was, anyone.
Christopher Plummer. You remember when he was in Christopher Plummer?
I remember Christopher Plummer.
We had the Dropkick Murphys come to do a show with us.
Yeah. Before we talk about...
You missed that before you? We had the Dropkick Murphys do a show.
Yeah, they came in a show, yeah. But before we talk about David Copperfield... we had John Travolta came into Boston. They were filming a movie that was called The Forger. And I think originally he was staying at the Revere, and then later he moved to another hotel. But he would order all of his food from Rustic Kitchen, and he only wanted to eat at Rustic Kitchen every single meal. So we were sending room service up to him. We were sending room service up to him for breakfast and lunch, and he would come down during the day, an odd time, like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and we'd give him a table in the dining room. He'd be the only one in there, and he'd have a meeting. It would be his agent, his manager, his PR, his publicist, himself. And they'd stay in there for hours. And he was the first one, by the way, that said to me the proper way. He said, do you know, Tina Fey looks just like your manager. And I always thought that was a very smart way to do it, as opposed to, you look like so-and-so. He said, Tina Fey looks like...
He's a pro.
And it is true.
He's a pro.
And so then what happened was he was relocated. I think he went over to the Four Seasons. But we were then doing these huge takeout orders of 3-4 shopping bags full of Rustic Kitchen food that would be sent over to the Four Seasons for the whole time that he was filming,
Mhm.
which was it seemed like he was here for almost 2 months.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a
probably.
long
And
time.
similar
was-
with Patrice Bergeron when he was injured when the hospital. We were sending food to him in the hospital every day.
Every day we were sending food to Patrice Bergeron, and he had
Bruins
that
hockey
horrible
player.
injury. Yeah,
Right,
and
yeah.
eventually he did come in one time and he thanked us, and he stepped in and said hi to everyone during the show. He was great. And then, of course, David Copperfield is a client of mine, and when he tours 300 days a year, so he had a couple of shows at the Wang. And I got a call one day from his assistant, and she said, David's in town. He'd like to come over to the restaurant after the show. And I said, sure. And I know the protocol. You got to keep it low key. Doesn't want to be bothered. Just have a nice, quiet dinner. As most celebrities like to, basically, when they're on their time, they like to be left alone. So I said, why don't you send the crew over before the show, and they'll be my guests. So about 8 or 10 of them came over, and we had a wonderful time and a dinner. And I promoted that, and some of them I had known because I had worked on a few of his projects. Then he'd go and they do the show, and then around midnight, I get a call from his assistant. She says he's going to be coming over now, and I said okay. So I asked one server to stay. I told the kitchen to stay open. I kept 2 or 3 people in the kitchen, and everyone else sort of had wrapped up. And we had to lock the front door because we don't want that element coming into the restaurant. And I'm just looking through the glass at the atrium waiting, and somehow the word got out, and there's a crowd of people waiting in front of the restaurant for David Copperfield. And I open the door and I lock it behind me, and I'm standing out on the sidewalk, and slowly around the corner at Fleming's comes this long stretch limo, and it comes up to the restaurant, slows down, and the window gets lowered a little bit, and then I see the limo speed up, and it goes away. And I said, they saw there was a crowd here. He didn't want to deal with the crowd, and he's gone. And everyone looks at me, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys. Sorry. So they all sort of mull around, and they start to leave. And I'm going back to the door, and as I'm unlocking it, this beat up old cab comes around the corner. Or it actually it had been parked a few doors down, and it starts to come forward. And as I look over, the window comes down, and it's David inside this beat up old cab. Typical, being the magician that he is, he
A magician.
has to trick everyone into thinking that he's gone, and he steps out of the cab with his girlfriend, a girl named Chloe. And I open the door, they sneak in, and I lock the door behind them. And then, they sat at 300, and we had, and he didn't eat a lot, she didn't eat a lot either, but we had a lot of different food for them to try. And they stayed till about 3 o'clock in the morning, which is, their day for them, because they live on a different, and eventually, at one point I said, can I let the kitchen go? And he said, yeah, I think I kept one bartender, and the server wanted to stay. And eventually I said, David, if you have a moment, if you could sign a napkin for her, she'd be thrilled. But I asked him, and he did, of course. And then I finally let her go. And then they just stayed. I actually went back and, closed out and did all the paperwork and the money and whatnot, and eventually came out and sat with them. And around 3 o'clock, he made a phone call. Someone came out, opened the front door. He went out, jumped in a car, and they left. But that was, the type of restaurant we had. Tuukka Rask. Remember Tuukka Rask was in one time? He was the Bruins goalie, and he sat at.
You're asking me. I don't remember athletes.
Yeah, okay. So he came in. He had a good time, and then all of a sudden, he must have talked about it in the locker room. We started getting a lot of Bruins coming to the restaurant. So that's the way it was over there, and a lot of
few politicians. That's where I met Governor Charlie Baker for the first time, who's now the NCAA president. Mayor, several mayors of Boston over the years there. Senator I ended up working for first.
Patrick, right? I think.
I met Deval Patrick, so he was another governor. Yeah. Met him there as well.
Yeah.
Yep. It was a very central location. You're right next to the theater district. You're next to Park Square. You're next to Back Bay. Yeah. So there was a lot of just the Jordan's Furniture guy lived across the street. Is it Barry from Jordan's Furniture?
Came in all the time.
Yeah, he lived right there. Yep, Barry and Elliott.
Barry Tenenbaum. very Tenenbaum. And
Yeah.
Meghan Markle, right? Meghan Markle came in.
Meghan Markle.
Yeah, yeah.
Was
Yeah.
she in the movie with John Travolta? Because I feel like they overlapped, but they
Maybe.
might. I don't know. They're there around the same time.
I'll-
So
It was the
you-
same era.
You have good memories of Boston. Do you have any good memories of Kingston?
Well, I mean, the experience of opening a restaurant in general was a great experience. Unfortunately, I don't think because I had John literally,
Your son.
12 months after it opened. So I feel like we never really got in a position where I felt like, we had our, best foot forward during
Yeah.
table.
Well,
I mean, it had the makings for it. It just was hard to get in a groove.
I
And
think
it was a much
I think that
That
we
was
certainly.
I remember being like, I think something's wrong with all these boys. Did they go to like special school? Anne Marie's like, no, they're just high schoolers. I was like, all
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it was high school.
Yeah, I think that location, we did what we were supposed to do down there. We built
That is true.
incredible facility, a beautiful studio. The mall owners did not do what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
They basically laid a big fat egg. And I don't know if you know this,
Right.
Katrina, but eventually, when the mall was sold, now this is a mall that was $155 million mall. It was sold for $9.7 million.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've lost most of their malls now that I think.
Yeah, they're a shell
I
of them
think
of their former self.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw that they no longer owned like the few that I knew that they owned. I just didn't
Yeah. All
connect
gone.
the dots, but
All
Yeah.
gone. Yeah.
wow.
So the Boston restaurant was very successful. You were running that. Hingham, that was on the South Shore in the suburbs, was very different, and it's hard for people to understand that even though they were the same name and a similar menu,
Right.
the culture, the staff, the clientele, they really were two different worlds. And
Mhm.
when you went to Hingham, I don't think you enjoyed your time there trying to bring.
Well, no, it was different. It was different. They're just it was more complex because I feel like I knew what I was doing at the other restaurants because I was managing, and then I went into this place and I had had a lot of staff who'd been there a really long time, and they'd be like,
Yeah.
"We don't, you don't have to tell us that. We do it this way." Like, no, I'm telling you, like these are rules. Don't order more food as a kid's mac and cheese and then write salt and pepper. Like like, this isn't a me problem. Like.
Yeah.
So it was just different. And
A-
I mean,
A bit
a
of
lot
an
of them
inmates
were,
running the asylum situation there.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like that as an outsider, but I also they were probably like, why is she even here if she's so miserable? I spent a lot of time in the kitchen too, because I feel like they were always like in need of someone to expo or like, it was
Yeah.
less.
It was definitely, it was definitely a Venus and Mars situation. Other than the name and some similarities on the menu, it was a suburban restaurant. You had a lot of locals that were, customers, great customers, been there forever, and the staff just sort of fell into their ways. They did not operate at Four Diamond standards. They operated at the standard that we trained them, and then it got watered down to what their personality was, which worked down there. But when
I was gonna say people loved them.
yeah, people love them. But when I wanted to sort of push that standard back up closer to, I wanted to see if we could get on an even keel with all the different restaurants. When we tried to do that, and Katrina went down and did it, there was a lot of resistance. And
Yeah.
they had happy customers, they were making good money, and they'd been there a long time. And they were like,
Like, who's this person?
we're going to do what we want to do there.
Should be talking about the cooking show. Like,
Yeah.
And
We'll see.
speaking of landlords, that space. So after we left or were sort of pushed out because we didn't want to pay double rent, it sat empty
Well, yeah,
for
the
a
lease
year.
was up.
Yeah.
We were at the 15. The lease was over. It was 15
Mhm.
years. We were done. So go ahead.
And yeah, they wanted us to spend money to update the concept, which everyone loved and didn't have a problem. All the sales were going up. They wanted us to spend money on retheming and pay more rent. And when we said we can't afford that, they chose to then spend a year and a half having no tenants, which I still don't understand the logic of that. Then they spent a lot of money on TI bringing in a new tenant. They demoed the whole place. That guy's already gone. He lasted about, I think, 18 months.
Yeah. It's on its third iteration now. Yeah.
Yeah.
They went from rustic, they did Asian fusion,
Yep. It's had
and
empty for a year and a
now it's more
half.
of a Tex-Mex thing, doing all types of themes over there.
So
But
you've been married how many years?
ugh, 9.
How old's John?
Very yeah. John is 7
7. Okay.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we met you when you were what?
25, I
20.
think said.
Was it
Yeah.
Yeah, 25.
I think 25,
25?
26, yeah.
So what I always liked is that you were plugged into the Boston food scene in a way we weren't, because whenever we were in Boston, we were at our own restaurant. And so we weren't,
Right.
Right.
we weren't really sampling the scene. We weren't, doing things. But your husband, Max, was a chef
Mhm.
at the same time in Boston at Eastern Standard at the time.
Yeah, so he started there. He was at Eastern Standard, then he moved over to Island Creek. So he was with that restaurant group in the Hotel Commonwealth. And then he opened the different various Row 34s
Right.
back when all of those were one company. They've
Mhm.
since separated. But there was also like their glory days, really. Like, Eastern
Yeah.
Standard was
Eastern Standard is an iconic, or what it's gone now, right? The landlord.
right.
It's always
Yeah.
with a restaurant, it's always go back to the landlord. If you're wondering why your favorite restaurant is gone, it's the landlord's fault.
Always.
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 Yeah.
How crazy do you have to get? Like, I think we all definitely saw this around the pandemic too, where it's like, all right, I have nothing more to give. Like, I cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What more do you want
serve
from
you
me?
with a smile?
So Eastern Standard was an iconic powerhouse,
Mhm.
restaurant. And Max was working there, and then that group grew. So
Mhm.
you guys, you would see what was going on and what was trending. And Max, is a fantastic chef. He then, though, didn't he work? Wasn't he a private chef for John Henry of the Red Sox
Yeah.
at one point?
Yeah.
But also, more importantly than Max being an excellent chef and working at those restaurants, your father and mother would also encourage me to go out and see other restaurants too, just to like see what else is out there. And I remember when I would go see my sisters, he'd be like, "Just go get breakfast at such and such a
Yeah.
place, or go see this place for dinner." Like, you get stuck in that hole of like
Yeah.
what you're doing, you get to see. And I think that's kind of obviously common in restaurants to kind of get stuck, but we're also a group of people who love to go out to eat. And it was recommendations. I was always
Yeah,
for
you definitely did the
yeah.
recon for us. It was difficult for us because we were always working, but even when we would go somewhere,
Mhm.
owners of restaurants don't like when owners of other restaurants come into their facility. They get a little uptight.
Right.
They think you're either rating staff, which we would never do,
Right.
or
Right.
they don't realize that you're just there to appreciate how well they operate, or have a great meal.
We also don't want special treatment. We don't want them to make a show. We don't want the chef to come out.
Right.
So when we would go out, we would go to this suburb. We had this. It's gone now. We can say Cafe Bella was in Randolph.
Cafe Bella.
This
Yeah.
is a nondescript restaurant in a strip mall, but it was fantastic. And that was like the
Yeah.
one place we
Right.
could go and just be anonymous. Yeah.
Right. No, those are some of the best places for food. Like,
Right. So
I don't
this,
know about the service, and your service is wonderful.
no, Cafe Bella was great. It was Patrick
Yeah.
Barnes was the chef, and he was his parents owned Bella's restaurant, which is I think is still
Mhm.
in Randolph, and we would go there anonymously for years and years and years, and our cover was blown after we won the first Emmy, and we were sitting
Oh.
there. Kathy and I were sitting there having quiet dinner one night, and one of the liquor salesmen came in, who was also our liquor salesman, and told Patrick, made a big thing. And, Patrick would
Mhm.
come by our table periodically over the years, but again, he didn't know us and we never reached out to him. And now
Mhm.
he comes over, makes, congratulations. We heard about the Emmy, and, the liquor salesman has some drinks come over, and everyone in the restaurant, which is a small restaurant anyway, they all look at us and a little round of applause. And that was it.
Yeah. We don't want that.
No, we ruined it.
They did. So, anytime we went there after that, someone would always recognize us, and it was never the same. We could never just go in and relax and have dinner. So,
Mhm.
when we would send you out, and you liked Hawthorne too. That was one of your favorite restaurants, right? Hawthorne?
Hawthorne was a bar.
Okay.
They just did like small bites. They had like deviled eggs.
Well, that's
I
funny
was
because
researching other things. I was
Michael, on
researching
her
other things.
expense reports from Hawthorne, which we always thought was a restaurant, she would always say dinner at Hawthorne's.
Uh,
Yeah.
I did a lot of research. So you're welcome.
So yeah,
How did you and Max meet?
When I worked in Concord, he actually ended up in Concord. He's from Charleston, South Carolina. He
Right.
moved up here because of a lady he was dating. They were living in Cambridge, and I guess when they broke up, I don't know. He ended up in Concord. He was working at like a wine shop and cooking at this place here. It's actually still open. I haven't been there like over a decade. But so he was managing that place, but he lived near where I was working, and so he used to come into the bar, and that's how we met. But
Did he go to culinary
he
school
finished
or
work.
just work his way up in the kitchen?
Max, he
Yeah.
worked his way up in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. He went to art school. He was a studio art major.
Nice.
I never knew that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Michael, and someday we're going to do a podcast just on some of the most world famous chefs never went to culinary school.
Oh yeah. Well, we've mentioned it before. Mike Kelly, which was probably our most talented chef, he never went to culinary school. He has a food truck now on the South Shore, time traveling food truck. Check it out.
Yep.
But I love you and Max are both working at high volume restaurants in Boston. I thought that was a great fit. That if you wanted to be in this industry, you need a partner that is on a nighttime schedule and understands these demands, and that like at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when you get off is ready to relax and go hang out, as opposed to me sitting at home like, where are you?
Right. We had we had a lot of, but really threw a wrench in it was having a child. But
yeah, why you do that?
That'll happen.
Max was like, well, one of us should probably be home.
Those damn kids, they'll do it every time.
Always.
That's what nanas are for. You need a nana.
I know. But I mean, the hours are pretty crazy. Not just, more his than mine, really. I think he was also at a point where he was ready. So he became a chef, a private chef for an individual in their home, using that for a while. And then right before the pandemic, he left that job, which was, I guess it was a pretty cushy gig. It was like 4 days a week, was fine. Or like, maybe let's say end of 2019, he started working for as a sales rep for a company that sells to restaurants. His clients would have been Eastern Standard, all of his old things. I was like, this is it. I'm going. I'm retiring. But the pandemic hit, and it like all just like completely fell apart. So, everything happens for a reason. He loves what he's doing now. But it just was funny because he was like, I'm working less and less and less. This is wonderful. Like I'm gonna be home with this child. But yeah, so but him leading restaurants, he knew it was going to be really hard for me to lead restaurants. And so he had a lot of patience with me doing it for, much longer than I should have. But I think that it is really important for everyone to work in a restaurant at some point in their life. I think it's a really good learning experience for everyone.
If you don't work in the service industry, at least retail, but you have to have that experience of seeing
we really do.
How crazy people are and how the things that people will say and yell and do, and the dynamics of a small margin environment that's just every day on your feet.
I think the psychology of people, you can't get a better education than dealing with an unreasonable, hungry guest.
Drunk. Could be drunk too.
It could be drunk too. Who didn't make a proper reservation or exceeded the number count, showed up a half hour late, and then orders things that aren't on the menu. And of course, what's the problem with that?
Right, nothing. Let me get that for you. Let me go talk to Chef. Hold on.
Well, listen, if you ever decide to open your own restaurant, please call Kathy and I. We will help you any way we can. Because,
oh my gosh. Yeah, you'd be the first call. My goodness.
If you ever want to license a Rustic Kitchen, let me know.
Wait, I think, I don't keep in touch with him as often as I should, but I do talk to Mark Turlow occasionally. And I think he told me who got your license once upon a time.
Oh, the liquor license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I forget who.
Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've also talked before about how
I want to
crazy
say it was like Wagamama. It was something really random.
no,
and I was like,
Wagamama
really?
became Faneuil Hall. The Rustic Kitchen Faneuil Hall became a Wagamama.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
All right, I'm confusing two stories.
Yeah, we sold that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sold that. Yeah. So I wanted to tell a funny story, Michael, about
Yeah.
a Christmas present that Katrina.
I was just gonna say you have the award for the best Christmas present we've ever gotten, hands down.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Thank you.
So yeah,
And you know what?
tell them.
Yeah. So how many years ago was it? First of all, that you did this?
A long time ago. Long time.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Oh, more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Well,
it's probably around 2013.
13. Yeah.
we're
So that's
probably
over 10 years ago.
probably getting down close to the bone on this thing by now. That's how long
Good.
it
Oh my
lasts.
gosh.
Okay. But
Well, it was definitely bigger than I thought it was going to be.
well, yeah, so Katrina.
Katrina goes to Italy, right? You're on a trip.
So I go to my brother-in-law is from Trieste, Italy. So he's from northern Italy. So they got married there. They spend a lot more time than we do, but we go for the sacraments. So what my niece had her christening there and her first communion. And so this was her christening. So I being the godmother, Max and I go. And we were there for, we were tourists. We wanted to see a bunch of other places. So we went to Rome, went to the Vatican, got a bunch of rosaries blessed, came back. I'm such a tourist. But anyway, so we went to San Daniele, which is like the prosciutto capital. And I don't know if when you were in Italy, you had the opportunity to go to this little pig town. It is super cute. But everything in that town is dedicated to prosciutto. So
As it should be.
I thought it was fake. I was like, these walls are not pig legs, right? Like I had it just was surreal. So anyway, that's in like June. So, Christmas time rolls around. I meet all my brother-in-law's friends, but met throughout the years, whatever. One of them, his family owns a prosciutto company in San Daniele. His name's Lottie. And so we hung out with him a lot at the christening. Very, very few people do actually speak English in Trieste. So we were kind of living with him. We could talk to him. So I end up emailing him because the year before I got a Panettone. I didn't like that one. I think I did like a bottle of wine. So this is the best idea. I will get prosciutto from the source because I was like it was a really great experience going to San Daniele, but it was just, we were just able to plate of prosciutto and like a glass of wine everywhere we went. I emailed Lottie and I was like, I think I'd like to get this for the owners. Like, what do you get? I mean, kind of hard to shop for. You I wouldn't want yourself, really.
It's very hard to shop for.
And it was like the size of like this couch. It was way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
It was a massive of the best prosciutto.
So funny though, because he's like, you won't use a motor on this, right? And I was like, how the heck else do you think we're gonna cut it? Like, I don't have like a hand slicer. Like, of course we're using a motor. He's like, because it cuts the fat and then no good. I was like, only fat. Well, it was fat. But that was funny.
So yeah, you got
when this thing arrived,
a lifetime supply of prosciutto.
I know.
For those listeners, when you
could have told me that I was.
When you order prosciutto and it comes thinly sliced, I'm talking like tissue paper thin, and you have 7 or 8 or 9 slices of that on a sandwich. That's a $15 sandwich. I don't know what pound of prosciutto is per pound, but it's got to be.
I don't know. Yeah,
$10 or $11 a pound, maybe more. So this leg is bigger than this whole screen here. It must have weighed
the size that your 7-year-old son is now is probably the size it was then.
I know.
Yeah, it must have weighed 40 pounds, and I was taken aback. I don't even know what it would cost. What is that? Something like that cost?
I don't know. I still don't know.
So this thing arrives, and it's at the restaurant, and she brings me to look at it, and I'm flabbergasted. Like, I'm so happy, but
like, why did you get that?
But but then reality sets in. Like, what am I going to do with all of this?
No, what am I going to do with 17 pounds of ham?
So, they slice some of it and they carve it up, and we have some prosciutto, and and then it's like prosciutto for everybody. I mean,
Hey, you're gonna prosciutto. You're gonna.
right. But of course, we also don't want to just give it away, because
It's really
we sell it
good.
in restaurants on many.
No,
many
you were so funny about it too. Like, if you could have done whatever you wanted with it, but you were like you were very concerned. You're like, would you mind if we served this at our Christmas party? I was like, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah,
I was pretty surprised by the size myself. What does someone do with that much ham?
Do you remember that Lady Gaga photo when she's covered in meat? She
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
we
She
could
can
have.
carry this one.
We could have.
She could probably
covered
most
me
of
in
the
meat
bottom.
sliced in it.
You
Yeah.
could've-
Yeah.
You could have been prosciutto Mike. Prosciutto Mike.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many years ago that was, but we're just now getting down to the bone now, Katrina. So it's lasted a long time.
Every once in a while, I see Costco has something now you can order from Costco, like
Yeah.
and every
Around the
time I see
holidays.
it, I think of that, and I'm like, oh, that was great. Oh, we might have just lost Jim there.
UJ. Yeah, I was seeing that they had this Serrano ham. I think of that too, because that
Yeah.
was just so funny that I was like, I thought it was going to be like something more manageable.
Yeah, I think that one comes with some kind of like holder, and you're supposed to
Like a
slice
rack.
off. Yeah, and you're supposed to slice off
Yeah.
the top, keep the fat, and then you put the fat back on the top to keep it like from going bad. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw I think I saw that on Instagram.
I probably did too.
I didn't
Yeah,
know.
we did not do it like that.
No, I had no idea. I certainly didn't know. I was like, oh, your problem now. I don't
This is our fifth time doing this, and we still have never got one without a technical difficulty. So, of the 4 people we started this podcast with, the two are here that matter. So we did it.
We did it. I was really nervous. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not the most technically savvy.
Yeah, but
never.
look who's still here. We got Jim in his
But I
studio
made
can't
it.
figure it
I
out,
made it.
and you're here on your iPad in Concord. That's the
Yay.
Concord spirit. That's why we had the
That
American
is the
Revolution.
song that's we're
It
resilient.
goes right here. That's the shot heard around the world right now.
right here.
Well, I think we probably should wrap it up.
Right.
It's everyone's gone. Katrina, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Boston would not have survived that long without you. Breakfast would have been a fiasco without you. Kingston could not have happened without you. So, huge part of the Rustic Kitchen story.
Timing was bad, but that was a great restaurant. Unfortunately, something was off.
Yeah.
But
It was in the water.
Beautiful
It could have
restaurant.
been the nuclear plant a few miles away. Remember they had the
I blame a
sirens?
lot on that nuclear plant. I was like, why are there so many twins? Like,
So yeah, if anyone wants to look it up, in Plymouth, Massachusetts, there's a nuclear power plant, and we weren't far from that, and you can draw your own conclusions on
right.
what happened there. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
And
yeah.
let us know.
Katrina, thank you so much. Say hi to Max and
Thank you,
John.
Michael.
Thank you for everything you've done for me and the family.
Of course. Good luck with the next couple weeks.
Yep.
Months.
I graduate a few weeks, take the bar in July, and then I think I'm going to do a bar trip to Japan, maybe some other places.
Oh,
And then I'll go back to the
That'd be
firm
cool.
after that. Yeah.
well, congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Well,
right, we'll
have
keep
a
in
good
touch.
weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.